of 2 Samuel. We are in chapter 18, and we're going to pick up right with verse 19. Then Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, let me now run and bear the king tidings, how that the Lord hath avenged him of his enemies.
So, after Absalom's death, they send a runner back to give the news to David that the victory's won. Things are relaxed now, okay? And so Zadok, son Ahimaaz, he requests permission from Joab to go take the news to the king that his enemies had been subdued. And Joab didn't want Ahimaaz to be the one who told David of Absalom's death. It appears that from just the wording of this, that a good guy carried good news, a bad guy carried bad news, okay? Mm-hmm. So he didn't want a good guy carrying bad news to David, is how it appears, okay?
And Joab said unto him, Thou shalt not bear tidings this day, but thou shalt bear tidings another day. But this day thou shalt bear no tidings, because the king's son is dead.
I don't want you taking bad news to the king, is what it boils down to.
Then said Joab to Cushai, Go tell the king what thou hast seen. And Cushai bowed himself unto Joab and ran.
So Joab told this Cushite messenger, you go and you tell David what you've seen. And so the Cushite obeys.
Then said Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, yet again to Joab, But howsoever, let me, I pray thee, also run after Cushai. And Joab said, Wherefore wilt thou run, my son, seeing that thou hast no tidings ready?
So Ahimaaz insists on running as a messenger to the king, and Joab, why do you want to run? You have no specific news to give to the king. Evidently, Ahimaaz was not an eyewitness to what had taken place. He just seen a turmoil, but he wasn't evidently up close and personal on the thing.
But howsoever, said he, let me run. And he said unto him, Run. Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and overran Cushai.
This is where I said earlier, Ahimaaz was a runner, right?
Yes.
So Cushai got a head start on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when Joab does consent and lets Ahimaaz run, Ahimaaz knows the way of the plain, outruns the Cushite.
And David sat between the two gates, and the watchman went up to the roof over the gate unto the wall, and lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, a man running alone.
So this will give you a little insight that there's still a base camp set up, city, walls, watchman on the wall, okay? And so when the watchman sees Ahimaaz running, then he reports to David that there's a man running alone.
And the watchman cried and told the king, and the king said, If he be alone, there is tidings in his mouth. And he came apace and drew near.
So David said, well, if he's alone, then there's good news in his mouth.
And the watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called unto the porter and said, Behold, another man running alone. And the king said, He also bringeth tidings.
So here Ahimaaz continues to run toward the city at a rapid pace. The watchman sees the second runner, and he notifies the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper informs the king. There's another man running along.
And the watchman said, Methinketh the running of the foremost is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. And the king said, He is a good man, and cometh with good tidings.
So they must have had some experience in Ahimaaz's run, right? Mm-hmm. So they see the front runner, and then they see the second runner. The king says, well, they both bringing news. And he says, well, that front one this running looks like it's it's Ahimaaz. And David says, well, if it's Ahimaaz, he's going to bring good news.
And Ahimaaz called and said unto the king, All is well. And he fell down to the earth upon his face before the king, and said, Blessed be the Lord thy God, which hath delivered up the men that lifted up their hand against my lord the king.
So Ahimaaz saying, all is well. He bows to the king and says, Bless the Lord your God, who delivered up the man who raised his hand against my lord the king.
And the king said, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Ahimaaz answered, When Joab sent the king's servant, and me thy servant, I saw a great tumult, but I know not what it was.
So first thing David's asking, is Absalom safe? How about the welfare? What's going on with Absalom? And Ahimaaz says, basically, I don't know. I saw a tumult, but I don't know what it was all about.
And the king said unto him, Turn aside and stand here. And he turned aside and stood still.
So David just saying, you stay over here, let's see what the second messenger has to say.
And behold, Cushai came, and Cushai said, Tidings, my lord the king, for the Lord hath avenged thee this day of all them that rose up against thee.
So here the Cushites is saying something a little bit different, but yet giving good news to the king. The Lord's avenged you of all those who rose up against you.
And the king said unto Cushai, Is the young man Absalom safe? And Cushai answered, The enemies of my lord the king, and all that rise against thee to do thee hurt, be as that young man is.
Now this is a soft way of saying he's dead, okay? Mm-hmm. He just said, may the enemies of my lord the king be like this man. Anyone that wants to hurt you, let them be like this man, like Absalom.
And the king was much moved, and went up to the chamber over the gate, and wept. And as he went, thus he said, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son.
See, David is so emotional about the loss of this son that he's basically oblivious of the fact that Israel's been defeated and his kingdom has been saved, is what it boils down to. But he goes into this mindset of grieving for his son, which was actually detrimental to him, or could have been detrimental had he not snapped out of that state.
Chapter 19. And it was told Joab, Behold, the king weepeth and mourneth for Absalom.
So Joab, commander of David's army, Joab gets word the king's crying, the king's mourning for Absalom. And it infuriates Joab, you'll find out.
And the victory that day was turned into mourning unto all the people, for the people heard say that day how the king was grieved for his son.
So rather than to have a rejoicing over a great victory, the armies hear the king's mourning over Absalom. And so they're going to come in by stealth, you understand. We'll slip in without notice of the king, basically.
And the people got them by stealth that day into the city, as people being ashamed steal away when they flee in battle.
So instead of coming in like, with the victory parade and all that, they come in like somebody that's been defeated in battle, like cowards that have run.
But the king covered his face, and the king cried with a loud voice, O my son Absalom, O Absalom, my son, my son.
I don't think we can get the full grasp of the emotion being displayed by David. I mean, this is affecting all those around him. So it's not just some quiet thing, my son, you understand? These people are hearing all this. He is emotionally distraught.
And Joab came into the house to the king and said, Thou hast shamed this day the faces of all thy servants which this day have saved thy life and the lives of thy sons and of thy daughters, and the lives of thy wives and the lives of thy concubines.
So Joab just goes in and rebukes the king. And I mean, he just tells him, listen, you've disgraced this army that saved your life and saved the lives of all the members of your family. Now you're making them feel ashamed through these actions of yours, through your emotions is the essence of it.
In that thou lovest thy enemies and hatest thy friends, for thou hast declared this day that thou regardest neither princes nor servants. For this day I perceive that if Absalom had lived, and all that we had died this day, then it had pleased thee well.
So Joab's not backing off from him. Joab's angry, upset, and he's just telling David, you don't regard your leaders, you don't regard your soldiers. And I perceive that if Absalom was still alive today and every one of us were dead, then that'd just be good in your sight. In other words, he's bringing a reality to him to snap him out of this grieving. Okay?
Now therefore arise, go forth, and speak comfortably unto thy servants. For I swear by the Lord, if thou go not forth, there will not tarry one of these this night, that will be worse unto thee than all the evil that befell thee from thy youth until now.
So Joab's advising David, you better go out and speak to the hearts of these soldiers, because if you don't speak to them, they're not going to stay with you through the night. And they'll all abandon you because you disgraced them. It'd be worse than all the evil you've experienced in your lifetime. You better do something about this. Let me tell you something. You know, people try to take people through grieving processes and all that. Grieving doesn't do anybody any good. If a person's dead, they're dead, and there's not a thing you can do about it. You understand? But I'll tell you what you can do. You can ruin your life, and you can ruin the lives of all those around you just constantly grieving and constantly talking about it. You've got to get over it. You've got to get on with life. Was it a bad thing? It's a bad thing. But what are you going to do about it? You can't bring them back. But life goes on, and we have to understand that. That's too hard for you? Okay.
Then the king arose and sat in the gate, and they told unto all the people, saying, Behold, the king doth sit in the gate. And all the people came before the king, for Israel had fled every man to his tent.
Now here again shows you that David will take advice. He was teachable, okay? And so after Joab's advice, David goes out to the city gate. And then when the people hear the king sitting in the gate, we're talking about the people, we're talking about his army, we're talking about his leaders, okay. They go out to where he is. And because of David's reaction to Absalom's death, all these guys had withdrawn to their tents. They were afraid to come into his presence. But now that they realize that he's out there, then they have a change of heart and they come to him.
And all the people were at strife throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, The king saved us out of the hand of our enemies, and he delivered us out of the hand of the Philistines. And now is he fled out of the land for Absalom.
So, if you stop and think about this is I don't know how to describe it, but this is a major operation that's going on. Okay, you've got thousands of people out there, and so there's some major decisions to be made now. You know, now basically we could say the war is over. But then there's the aftermath of the war. David and his armies have left Jerusalem, and now Israel is without a king, it appears, you understand. And so then there has to be some decisions made on David going back. Is he going to be reinstated? Will the people go along with that? Will the armies come back under, his leadership? There's a lot of ramifications to the war, and and getting things reorganized, and that's exactly what he's having to do. It's just a regrouping, not just with his army, but now you've got to get the favor of the other army and get the nation unified once again.
Verse 10, and Absalom, whom we anointed over us, is dead in battle. Now therefore, why speak ye not a word of bringing the king back?
So, throughout all these tribes of Israel, there was actually contention over bringing David back to Jerusalem to assume the position of king over Israel. But then some of these leaders are reminding one another of the times David had served them. He had delivered them from their enemies and how he had defeated the Philistines. And they were also aware that he had run from Absalom, whom they had anointed to be king, and that Absalom was dead. And someone posed the question, well, why are you silent about bringing back the king? In other words, don't just talk about it, let's do something about it.
And King David sent to Zadok and to Abiathar the priest, saying, Speak unto the elders of Judah, saying, Why are ye the last to bring the king back to his house, seeing the speech of all Israel is come to the king, even to his house?
So David sends word to Zadok and Abiathar, requesting them to speak to these elders, these diplomats of Judah, concerning his return. It's not just I'm king and I can go and come as I please. There's other people involved in all this. There's other people in decision-making positions. You still have an army that you're not sure about, whether they're going to regroup and come against you or whatever. So he has to have the approval of the people in order to return, or he's putting himself in harm's way.
Ye are my brethren, ye are my bones and my flesh. Wherefore then are ye the last to bring back the king?
So David, remember, was from the tribe of Judah. And so he is saying, why have you not invited me back to Jerusalem? Other tribes have welcomed me, but my own tribe has not welcomed me. And so he's wanting Zadok and Abiathar to intercede for him, basically.
Mm-hmm. Verse 13. And say ye to Amasa, Art thou not of my bone and of my flesh? God do so to me, and more also, if thou be not captain of the hosts before me continually in the room of Joab.
So David is not happy with Joab. Joab has blatantly disobeyed a direct order. And Joab has killed the king's son, okay? And so David has determined to remove him from being commander over his army. And so he sends word through Zadok and Abiathar, you meet with Amasa, and this is David's niece's son, and you tell him that he's going to replace Joab as commander of the army.
And he bowed the heart of all the men of Judah, even as the heart of one man, so that they sent this word unto the king, Return thou and all thy servants.
So the hearts of the men of Judah were united in agreement for David to return. So they give him the invitation to come back. He and his army are welcome back into Jerusalem, okay?
So the king returned and came to Jordan, and Judah came to Gilgal to go to meet the king and to conduct the king over Jordan. So
David then returned to the Jordan River, and representatives from the tribe of Judah, this would be diplomats, okay, they came to Gilgal to meet and to escort the king across the river of Jordan.
And Shimei the son of Gera, a Benjaminite, who was of Bahurim, hasted and came down with the men of Judah to meet King David.
Now you remember Shimei, the guy that was throwing rocks and cursing David when he left? Well, he's one of the first there to join the men from Judah who are going to meet David. So This is a welcoming party, okay?
And there were 1,000 men of Benjamin with him, and Ziba the servant of the house of Saul, and his 15 sons, and his 20 servants with him, and they went over Jordan before the king.
So this guy is not just some insignificant person. I mean, Shimei brought with him 1,000 men from Benjamin, and Ziba, the servant of Saul's household, with his 15 sons and 20 servants of Ziba, they're coming out there to meet David. I mean, this is a pretty good entourage, if you will.
Right. And there went over a ferry boat to carry over the king's household and to do what he thought good. And Shimei the son of Gera fell down before the king as he was come over Jordan.
So these Benjamites, and remember the Benjamites, that's where Saul was from, right? They accompanied those from the tribe of Judah as they crossed the Jordan River to meet David. And they have the means to bring the king's household across the Jordan River. So they're the ones that are making the provision to get him back to Jerusalem.
And said unto the king, Let not my lord impute iniquity unto me, neither do thou remember that which thy servant did perversely the day that my lord the king went out of Jerusalem, that the king should take it to his heart.
So Shimei, when he meets David, he falls on his face and he's requesting a reprieve from the wrong he'd done to David. When the king fled from Absalom, he's humbling himself. He's basically asking forgiveness, okay?
Mm-hmm. For thy servant doth know that I have sinned. Therefore, behold, I am come the first this day of all the house of Joseph to go down to meet my lord the king.
So Shimei admits that his sin, and he demonstrates his repentance by coming to escort the king back to Jerusalem.
But Abishai the son of Zeruiah answered and said, Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?
Remember Abishai, when Shimei was cursing David, when David was reading, Abishai was the one that told him, let me go over and cut his head off. Mm. Now when Shimei asked forgiveness, Shimei should be killed for his offense against the Lord's anointed. David says no. He spared Shimei's life.
And David,
he's not taking vengeance into his own hand, in other words.
And David said, What have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah, that you should this day be adversaries unto me? Shall there any man be put to death this day in Israel? For do not I know that I am this day king over Israel?
See, David's sister sons, his nephews, they're mighty men, but boy, they create problems for him, just like Joab and Abishai. And David, what have I to do with you guys? And he admitted, these guys are too strong for me. You don't think like I think. You want to just kill them and get them out of the way, okay? And so he says, no, there's nobody going to die. Don't you know that I'm king over Israel? I know it now. We've had this thing established, and so we're not going to kill him.
Therefore the king said unto Shimei, Thou shalt not die. And the king sware unto him. And Mephibosheth, the son of Saul, came down to meet the king, and had neither dressed his feet, nor trimmed his beard, nor washed his clothes, from the day the king departed until the day he came again in peace. And it came to pass, when he was come to Jerusalem to meet the king, that the king said unto him, Wherefore wentest not thou with me, Mephibosheth? And he answered, My lord, O king, my servant deceived me. For thy servant said, I will saddle me an ass, that I may ride thereon, and go to the king, because thy servant is lame. And he has slaughtered thy servant unto my lord the king. And he has slandered thy servant unto my lord the king. But my lord the king is as an angel of God. Do therefore what is good in thy eyes. For all of my father's house were but dead men before my lord the king. Yet didst thou set thy servant among them that did eat at thy own table. What right therefore have I yet to cry any more unto the king? And the king said unto him, Why speakest thou any more of thy matters? I have said, Thou and Ziba divide the land. And Mephibosheth said unto the king, Yea, let him take all, for as much as my lord the king is come again in peace unto his own house.
So Mephibosheth is Jonathan's son, and now he goes to Jerusalem to meet David. And now we get the truth of what actually happened. And Mephibosheth had not cared for himself. In other words, what you're seeing, not cared for his feet, trimmed his beard, washed his clothes, but David led, is showing that he is humbling himself. He's actually in a state of grief, if you will, for David. And so when he meets David in this condition, and David confronts him, why didn't you go with me? And Mephibosheth told that. He said, Ziba deceived me. He was supposed to have saddled a donkey for me because I'm crippled, but he left and left me behind. In other words, he hung me out to dry and made me look bad. And he slandered me before the king. And Mephibosheth tells David, just do what you think's right in your eyes. In other words, I'm at your mercy. Whatever you want to believe. And so he reminded David that, Saul's household could have been destroyed. In other words, you could have killed me, but you didn't destroy the household. You didn't destroy me. You invited me to eat at your table continually like one of the king's son. So what right do I have to request anything from you? And after hearing Mephibosheth's explanation, David commands that the land be divided between Mephibosheth and Ziba. If you remember, when Ziba told him that Mephibosheth was staying in Jerusalem thinking he was going to become king, David said, all right, you can have all the land. Mm-hmm. Quick decision. Remember this, condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance, right? And so you better investigate things and check things out before you make a quick decision. And now David makes another decision. All right, now, you get half, he gets half. Mephibosheth says, what do I care? I'm glad you're back. He can have it all. I don't care. He's not after position. He's not after possessions. You understand? He actually, it sounds like, was genuine like his daddy. That he probably had heard things about David and his daddy's covenant, you think? Mm-hmm. And so he really has a tremendous respect for David.
Verse 31, And Barzillai the Gileadite came down from Rogelim and went over Jordan with the king to conduct him over Jordan.
So Barzillai the Gileadite, who's a man of means, evidently a very wealthy man, he comes from Joram to escort David across the Jordan River. This is an 80-year-old man that's coming to do that, okay?
Now Barzillai was a very aged man, even 80 years old, and he had provided the king of substance while he lay at Mahanaim, for he was a very great man.
So a score is 20. 4 times 20 is 80. So he's 80 years old, okay? He says he was wealthy. He was wealthy enough that he could provide supplies for David whilst David was staying at Mahanaim, okay? And so he's just coming to meet the king, escort the king back into his domain, if I say it that way.
Yeah. And the king said unto Barzillai, Come thou over with me, and I will feed thee with me in Jerusalem.
So David invites Barzillai, you come to Jerusalem, you stay with me, you provided for me, I'll provide for you. is the essence of it.
And Barzillai said unto the king, How long have I to live, that I should go up with the king unto Jerusalem?
So Barzillai declined David's invitation. He said, look, I'm an old man, and I don't enjoy the pleasures of life. I'm old enough now, I'm not 18 anymore, right? And so, where meals mean something to some people, they don't mean as much to me, and all this kind of stuff. And I don't want to be a burden to you. Just let me go back to my place, and I'm well taken care of there, and that's where I'll die, and that's where I can be buried, okay?
Verse 36, Thy servant will go a little way over Jordan with the king, and why should the king recompense it me with such a reward?
So, we're going to accompany you across Jordan River, but why would you want to give me a reward? I'm not after a reward. There's a man of integrity, you understand. A lot of people like to get with the king so they think they can get something out of it. No, he's not wanting anything. He's genuine.
Let thy servant, I pray thee, turn back again, that I may die in my own city, and be buried by the grave of my father and of my mother. But behold, thy servant Kittim, let him go over with my lord the king, and do to him what shall seem good unto thee.
So he said, let me go back to my land. But right here's Kittim. So instead of me going back and all that, you just do for him what you think's good in your eyes.
And the king answered, Kittim shall go over with me, and I will do to him that which shall seem good unto thee, and whatsoever thou shalt require of me, that will I do for thee.
All right, you let him come on, and you just tell me what you'd like for me to do for him, and I'll do it.
And all the people went over Jordan, and when the king was come over, the king kissed Barzillai and blessed him, and he returned unto his own place.
So once they get over there, Barzillai has accomplished his mission. He wanted to see the king back safely. The king's back safely, so Barzillai goes home.
Then the king went into Gilgal, and Kittim went on with him, and all the people of Judah conducted the king, and also half the people of Israel.
So David goes on to Gilgal, and Kimham accompanies him. So David's honoring Barzillai's request, right?
And behold, all the men of Israel came to the king, and said unto the king, Why have our brethren, the men of Judah, stolen thee away, and have brought the king and his household, and all David's men with him over Jordan?
Now look at the differences here. Okay, Judah, the tribe that David's from, they've rallied around him, representatives from Judah, and half of the tribes of Israel. They've accompanied David. Men from other tribes of Israel were upset with the tribe of Judah because they had gone out to escort David back to Jerusalem, and hear this political garbage. They think that somebody's getting something, and somebody's getting recognition, somebody's getting reward, and all this kind of stuff.
And all the men of Judah answered the men of Israel, Because the king is near of kin to us. Wherefore then be ye angry for this matter? Have we eaten at all of the king's cost, or hath he given us any gift? So
the men of Judah, they reminded the representatives from, listen, David's a descendant from our tribe. We haven't eaten at the king's expense. The king hasn't given us a gift. This is not about that. This is about him being a relative of us, and we've gone out to meet him and to bring him back.
And the men of Israel answered the men of Judah and said, We have 10 parts in the king, and we have also more right in David than ye. Why then did ye despise us, that our advice should not be first had in bringing back our king? And the words of the men of Judah were fiercer than the words of the men of Israel.
I want you to listen to this. Sound like kids
Yeah.
arguing over a toy or something. You understand? Mm-hmm. So the men of Israel, hey, there's 10 of us. There's 2 of you, Judah and Benjamin. Okay, there's 10 of us. We got 10 shares in David, so we've got more right to David than you do. And the men of Judah contended with them. You know, they were the first to advise David to come back. It says the men of Judah prevailed in the discussion. In other words, they bowed their back and they stood their ground. And the bottom line is they ended the argument. And then we'll see things transpire in chapter 20. They ended that argument, but they didn't get all the problem resolved. There's still problems there that's got to be resolved. Our time's up, so we're going to have to stop here. We'll pick back up in our next session at chapter 20.
Father, I thank you that you bless us indeed. You enlarge our territory. Your hands with us to keep us from evil so that we do not cause pain. And I thank you for blessing us and keeping us and for making your face to shine upon us and being gracious unto us. You lift up your countenance upon us and you give us peace. So, Lord, we're glad to invite you to rise up. Let your enemies be scattered and let those who hate you flee before you. Amen. Amen.